Imagine a city on the brink of modernity, where electric lights strung across the streets promise a bright future. But beneath this veneer of progress, a dark shadow looms. Meet Eula Phillips, one of Austin's most enchanting young women in 1885. Her beauty captivated everyone, but her story is far from a fairy tale. Austin, once a rustic cowtown, was transforming into an urban paradise. Mule-drawn streetcars, party-line telephones, and elegant dining were the new norm. Yet, amidst this progress, a cold, calculating killer was stalking the women of Austin, leaving a trail of terror and blood. The attacks began with the city's black servants, like Molly Smith, found with a gaping hole in her head, and Eliza Shelley, nearly cleaved in two by an axe. The brutality escalated with Irene Cross, who was sliced up with a knife, and young Mary Ramey, stabbed and raped in a backyard washhouse. For a while, White Austin felt a false sense of security, believing the killer targeted only black women. But that illusion shattered on Christmas Eve, 1885. Sue Hancock, a refined white woman, was found with her head split open by an axe. The horror didn't stop there. Eula Phillips was discovered in an unlit alley, her skull bashed in, her body violated. The city was in shock. The murders were a gruesome foretaste of the violence to come in America's rapidly growing cities. The Austin killer was a modern criminal, striking fear into every household. The city was on the brink of chaos. Men raced from their homes, armed and ready to hunt the killer down. In an extraordinary Christmas Day meeting, city leaders devised plans to stop the killings, from lighting the entire city to setting off fire alarms during attacks. But just as suddenly as the attacks began, they stopped, leaving the city reeling and consumed with suspicions. The investigation into Eula Phillips' death was marred by incompetence and a clash of egos. The police force was ill-equipped to handle a serial killer. Chief Grooms Lee focused on black men, arresting them on flimsy evidence, while the real killer remained at large. The city's race relations were upended, with black residents living in fear and white citizens growing increasingly suspicious. Private detectives were brought in, but the climate of fear only intensified. Innocent men were beaten and jailed without cause. The district attorney decided to try Walter Spence, the boyfriend of the first victim, but he was acquitted. The real killer was still out there. In early 1886, Jimmy Phillips was arrested for his wife's murder, followed by Moses Hancock for his wife's death. The city was in disbelief. The trials were sensational, with the courtroom packed and the testimony riveting. The prosecution's theories were novel but unconvincing. Jimmy Phillips' trial revealed a tangled web of infidelity, abuse, and secrets. Eula had been visiting a house of assignation, meeting other men. The defense argued that Jimmy's footprints didn't match those at the crime scene, casting doubt on his guilt. Despite the evidence, Jimmy was convicted of exorcide and sentenced to 7 years. But the Court of Appeals later overturned the conviction. The Hancock trial ended in a hung jury, and both men were released. The city was left with more questions than answers. The murders had stopped, but the fear and suspicion lingered. Austin installed huge arc lights and closed saloons to prevent future crimes. The characters tarnished by the killings left the city or public life, and Austin tried to move on. Jimmy Phillips started a new life in Georgetown, but the events of 1885 haunted him until his death in 1929. Eula Phillips, the beautiful young woman who defied conventions, became a shadowy figure in history, her story almost forgotten. In Oakwood Cemetery, the victims of the Austin killer lie in eternal rest, their graves a silent testament to the terror they endured. The questions that haunted Austin 115 years ago still linger today. Who was the Austin killer, and why did he stop? The story of the murdered Austin women is not just a period piece. It's a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of progress. Join us next time as we delve deeper into the mysteries of the past. Remember, history is never truly forgotten. Stay curious.